Patch 2.3 just dropped, and with it there have been a few changes to Night City, and maybe a few new secrets. What is the Plex? And why was it mentioned so many times? What connection does Mint, a new character from the comic Kickdown, have to the Plex? And what was Yorinobu doing there? First, the Plex is a massive metropolitan area located on the East Coast in the NUSA. It connects Baltimore, Boston, Delaware, Langley, New York City, and Washington, D.C. And we know that Yorinobu designed his Mordred to specifically go there. A shard with Yorinobu and Anders Hellman shows a conversation about them talking about how intriguing the Plex is and how they went there together, meaning this most likely connects to the Relic. Did Yorinobu have a contact here who helped him get the Relic in the first place? Because if not, why bring Hellman? Why would he need a car like the Mordred just to drive around the Plex? Who was he trying to impress? And who was he trying to protect himself from? The initial design brief from 2075 says, the client requested this vehicle specifically for a discreet business trip to the Plex. It must be our latest weapon and armor systems to withstand all possible threats, both street level and corporate. It must comfortably seat both the VP and an associate. What threats was Yorinobu facing in the Plex? Why did he need such high-end protection from corporations? I suppose you could chalk it up to him being affiliated with Arasaka, but I think there's more to this. We also know that in 2077, the Mordred required an update to its autodrive, so Arlene Anwell and Harry Bell went to personally oversee its implementation. Usually they would go with security, but for whatever reason, the security specialists were stuck in the Plex, at least for a few more days, because they were apparently hard to please, so negotiations weren't finished. This left Arlene Anwell, the director of engineering of Rayfield International, and Harry Bell to come on their own without security. Through their logs, we see that Arlene was promoted because James Thompson was removed from his role due to concerns over the ethicality of Project 4.10.2, so Anwell took over. Their project updates also show they had special security measures in place, and this update is directly from the Plex. Another update says that they required further investigation in the Plex, and that they were meeting Yorinobu's second assistant. Again, another message from the Plex. The Plex was involved in the making of the Mordred. But who? Who were they consulting? Who is Yorinobu's second assistant? There's so many questions, and why at this point? Into the end of 2077? Why add more questions around the Relic and Yorinobu? If this storyline is finished, you'd think they'd finalize more mysteries instead of adding more. I think they could be setting up more connections for us to discover later. About the Relic, the Plex, Yorinobu, and even Hellman. I don't know if this storyline is over. They also mentioned that other projects that aren't listed here are also in the discussion phase. What are these other projects? More projects related to Yorinobu? More projects related to the Relic? Yorinobu tells Hellman, "He who does not enter the tiger's den can never reach the tiger's club." What is this tiger's den? What is the tiger's club? And why is it in the Plex? What were these engineers up to? And aside from the Relic, Yorinobu, and Hellman, who is El Capitan's client? And what information did they want this for? There are so many unsolved mysteries around this now. Also, hilariously enough, the concept of the car also has this tiny bit about Yorinobu's background. He, unsurprisingly, probably likes to be dominated and likes jazz music. With the Semi-Maro, we see a bit of a different situation, but it still ends up connecting back to the Plex. From River, we learn of this car that the police have been interested in, and how it's been stolen. When we go to grab it, Nova McCaster and Jax Foxgrave are the ones who had taken it, and Nova seems to have gone a bit cyber-psycho because of it. The Shard with their audio transcript has them talking about how they aren't surprised that Mint dominated the circuit because this car used to belong to her. This car has some pretty interesting personal history for Mint. So who is Mint? If you haven't read the comic Kickdown, she is a new character. She was a popular street racer, and with her girlfriend Tiff, the two had been fixing up the Semi-Maru for the last 2 years. Every inch has been fully customized. Mint is the famous daughter of famous street racer and car thief Jeremy Taylor. He taught Mint everything he knew when she was a child, but when she was still a kid, he was caught and arrested by the NCPD, leaving Mint on her own. During Taylor's imprisonment, he met Gorilla and Caliber, and once he was released, the three of them started their new crew, which Kickdown, a techie, would later join. Kickdown created chips with profiles of famous street racers, who were later used to help the driver race better. Jeremy Taylor would be one of these drivers. The chips worked too well, and NCPD put a bounty on Kickdown's head because of it. So Kickdown went into hiding and vanished. Mint's father would also be killed, leaving Mint alone once again. Following in her father's footsteps, Mint would also go on to become a racer. And with her girlfriend Tiff, the two would build the Yaiba Semi-Maru and customize every inch of it. During this time, Mint would get caught using the chips, and the NCPD would kill everyone in her crew but her. She refused to tell them anything about where she got her chip, so they kept her in jail for 6 months. The NCPD eventually decided to use her to fine Kickdown, and she was forced to accept their deal. Unfortunately, while she was in jail, everyone had labeled her a snitch that got her crew killed, and she was forced to work alone. Everyone except for her girlfriend Tiff had written her off. When Mint returned to Tiff after her 6 months of silence from being in jail, she tried to tell her not to get involved and to leave, but that she also needed the Yaiba Semi-Maru that they had been working on. The two finished installing the engine in the car, which was the last piece of work that it needed, and Mint took it drifting and racing. Her new car helped her lure out Kickdown, who she was able to then hand over to the police. At this point, her reputation was in the gutter. Tiff had been killed and she had nothing, so she decided to leave Night City and the Semi-Maru behind. The NCPD impounded it and used it to do whatever they wanted. Whenever the cops used the Semi-Maru, they used it under Mint's name. Ortiz, one of the cops using Mint, says in a conversation shard, "We pose as Mint. We accept hits on the city scumbags. We collect payment at dead drops for said hits. Mint takes the heat while we do the city a favor. Not to mention rake in a few eddies for all our hard work. NC's cleaner, no one's the wiser." And of course, this is how Mint's car was stolen, straight from the NCPD. Mint was also behind the Crystal Code tech quest. Claire sends us to a secret garage where we have access to her terminal. Here we find several mentions of the Plex. The first one is an advertisement to visit the Plex. It says, "You've heard the rumors, you've wondered if they're true. Find your own answers. Schedule a tour now." The tour packages range from short-stay vacation and permanent relocation. There's also a disclaimer at the end, saying that the PIB accepts no liability for theft, injury, psychological harm, abduction, cyberpsychosis, organ failure, rogue AI intervention, unauthorized surveillance, memory loss, or death during your stay at the Plex. Visit at your own risk. So the Plex is dangerous, and the mention of rogue AI intervention is interesting. The Plex is being set up to be dangerous, but it also sounds very similar to the kind of environment we know from Night City. But this is all that we really know about the Plex. We also don't know if maybe that's where Mint went. We don't know where she went after the comic, and it's unknown where she is in 2077. We also don't know what NCPD did with Takedown. The story has several loose ends and they seem to all connect to the Plex. But what actually is the Plex and what do we know about it? There are a few mentions in the original tabletop books when it was referred to as the Boschwash Corridor, before being renamed the Plex after Phantom Liberty. And this is based off of a real-world location in the US. There are a few mentions about how the Combined Operation Groups, aka the US military, still operates in this area, dealing with any threats to the region. We also know that in the past, the head of Biotechnica's project, Orchard, Professor Kogen Akigo, who was presumed dead, was actually found alive in the northwest woods of the Boss Wash, aka the Plex. A shard added in Phantom Liberty also talks a little bit about the political and societal landscape of the area. It's called A Step in the Right Direction. It doesn't reveal a lot, but this was the first official mention of the Plex. So far we have a Biotechnica connection, an Arasaka connection with Yorinobu, a Relic connection with Hellman, and a connection to Mint. All of these connect to the Plex. One more interesting thing connecting the Yaiba bike is this interesting conversation with Shinohara. The interview shard titled Behind the Blade has a conversation with the creator behind the Yaiba, and at the end of the interview it turns to something bigger than the topic at hand. He says, "I saw what the Fourth Corporate War did to my family, to our wealth, to our legacy. It is history's nature to repeat. Sooner or later, our cities will collapse. The bloat of corporate greed and militarism will escalate to conflict. Behemoth companies will topple like so many dominoes. All must pay a price." When asked how Yaiba will weather the coming storm, Shinohara says, "It is only meant to choose who does. The Murasama is a blade. Those who master it will be the ones who carve a future from the society's corpse." The interviewer is confused, wondering if he means the highly selective process of the Yaiba is a means to recruit survivors or leaders in this coming war. And Shinohara says, "In time it will. Our chosen clients have the best chance to emerge from the coming inferno." Now, this could be complete rich people mumbo-jumbo garbage, the ramblings of a creator who thinks his creations are bigger than they are, and it probably is. But the way he speaks of the future reminds me of an old Red stream with the Cyberpunk devs, about how they want to explore how worse the future looks. There's also several story threads alluding to another possible corporate war. Could this also be one of those hints? Like I said, this could absolutely be nothing. Or did V become a blade like Shinohara says? A survivor, a leader? So what does all of this mean? First, my conspiracy theory. I wonder if Morgan Blackhand is in the Plex. If he's part of whatever Yorinobu is afraid of, even if he doesn't know it. If Blackhand is operating there with other corporations or just secretively. In December, Pondsmith did mention that Blackhand is up to some very important things, and he had essentially been moving around. The Plex could fit this. And there are several places around the Plex for Blackhand to operate. But other than this, there's so many unanswered questions around Yorinobu's reason to go there, specifically with Hellman. And all the Mint connections, what could it all mean? What is in the Plex? Honestly, this could mean nothing. This could all mean nothing. Or this could be a setup for a future connection. A character in Orion, or even just another comic or storyline down the line. This is a newer comic, so I know CDPR is in the process of connecting things to Orion and working on the future stories in the cyberpunk world. Maybe this is one of them. We still have a bunch of upcoming content with Cyberpunk, and the mystery of who those 6 encrypted data slots are is still unsolved. It's only 135 days until Cyberpunk 2077's 5-year anniversary, so maybe we'll learn more there. Or maybe we won't. Keep your expectations low and make sure not to expect anything. But I am interested to see what CDPR does do for the 5-year anniversary. But let me know what you think. What do you think of the Plex? And what do you think Yorinobu was doing there? Did you read the comic Kickdown, and what did you think of Mint? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.